Ipswich won, Manchester United won, and there is a lot to unpack about Ruben Amorim's first game. There was some good, there was some bad, and there was some downright ugly, and I want to discuss all of it in today's video, starting with the good, because even though it won't suit the narrative, and it's not popular to say, Andre Onana was brilliant today. He was our man of the match. He is the reason we got a draw today, and he has been good all season long. He's silently been going about his business after being clowned, after being abused, and after being criticized throughout all of last season. And a lot of the people who were sending heat his way will not hold their hands up and just admit that they were wrong and that Andre Onana is a class goalkeeper. Because remember, this was his first bad season in a long time. He was good at Inter, he was good at Ajax, and he's been good everywhere he's been apart from Manchester United in his first season. That doesn't suddenly make him a bad player. One bad season does not discount a player's entire career. Always, always remember that. I said that about Casemiro. I've said that about countless players at Manchester United. And I'm saying it about Andre Onana. I've been saying it since day one. So shout out to Andre Onana. He deserves his flowers. Shout out to Amad Diallo, playing at right wing back, which I feel is a negative. It's a net negative long term, which I'll talk about later on in the video. But shout out to him. He played really well today. He was tenacious. He worked really hard. He did a lot of the grunt work defensively that he needed to do, playing in the wing-back position, obviously out of possession. And in possession, he was just a joy to watch on that right-hand side. It almost feels like his talent is being wasted at the wing-back position because of how technically good he is. And yes, out wide, I can see the vision. I can see why Amorim decided to play Amad Diallo out wide. But personally, I feel like he'd be better suited through the middle. But before I talk about why, because that's a bit of a negative, the last positive I want to talk about is shout out to the system, because we weren't getting carved open as much as we usually do through the middle. And I think that is a positive thing. Even though there were some issues today and it wasn't perfect by any means, there was a lot of red flags. The main positive for me is that Amorim is actually trying to implement his system. He's actually gone straight in, 3 at the back, no 4-2-3-1, saying, oh, I need a bit of time to figure out my system. It's like, no, this is how we're going to play from day one, away from home, against an Ipswich team that just picked up a 2-1 win against Spurs and are confident as they've ever been, their first win of the season. If you wanted to play Ipswich, it's definitely not now, because this is when they're at their most confident, and we, unfortunately, were victims of that today. So shout out to Amorim for being brave and talking about his system. And that's about where the good ends, I think, for today. Now we can talk about the bad and we can talk about the ugly, because there is a long list of things that I'm not happy about with regards to today's starting 11 and with regards to some of the individual performances. I'll start with the starting 11. Rashford, Bruno, and the boy Garnacho starting up front. It cannot happen again. And I know that it probably will happen a couple of times in the near future, just because we don't have that many attacking options. We decided to let go of Jadon Sancho, and we haven't really replaced him. And Antony doesn't really seem to be good enough to start in the forward line for Manchester United. So I'm not going to be too mad if I see these guys start over the next few weeks, as if there's a better option on the bench, because Amad Diallo, who is the better option, is playing at wing back, unfortunately. However, it still doesn't mean I'm just going to be silent and not call it out. These two were awful today. Rashford and Garnacho playing through the middle, I think, is far worse than both of them playing out wide. Because when they're playing through the middle in the half spaces, dropping deep, trying to link up the play, you can tell that they both have the same mindset. They both want to run into space. So when Rashford is receiving the ball and he's looking to give it to Garnacho so that he can quickly turn and run into space, Garnacho's also trying to run into space. So now you had so many situations in today's game, if you go back and watch it, where Rashford is trying to lay it off for Garnacho and trying to play a quick 1-2. Basically he's receiving the ball, trying to give it to Garnacho so that he can run into space, but Garnacho is also running into space, and it just doesn't work. If you're going to play in a 10 position or a deep lying forward position, whatever you want to call it, you have to be able to play with your back to goal. And you have to be able to know that, first of all, you have to have a good first touch. Second of all, you have to be able to protect the ball, because obviously you're going to get bullied by defenders. Third of all, you need to be able to have good close ball control. You also need to be able to read between the lines, play between the opposition midfield and the opposition defense. You need to know where to position yourself so you can receive the ball. Then on top of that, you need to be scanning. You need to have your head on a swivel so that when you receive the ball, you already know what you're going to do before you receive the ball. So by the time you get it, you're either going to turn left, play it forward, turn right, play it forward, or you're going to play it back and then quickly run into space and try to link up with the 1-2. Rashford and Garnacho cannot do that together and individually. I'd argue even if they weren't both starting, they'd still be terrible, but it's compounded by the fact that both of them are just road runners. They don't know how to do the intricate 1-2s. It just doesn't work. And even when they do make the right decisions, the technique isn't quite there. They were awful today, especially Garnacho. At least Rashford scored. But Garnacho, boy. And you know what? I used to be afraid to criticize Garnacho because he's a young player. We should protect him, blah, blah, blah. But the amount of minutes this guy has played, he's not the same as other young players. When you put it into context, he's essentially a senior player now with the amount of first-team games he's starting. He seems undroppable as well. So if anything, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think that it's time we start having uncomfortable conversations about Garnacho. It's long overdue. I'm sick and tired of people protecting him. Anyways, this is not a Garnacho pylon. I'll move on. I think Christian Eriksen playing in the midfield 2 today was absolutely horrendous. I think the starting midfield 2 should have been Ugarte and Casemiro, especially considering we were away from home against an Ipswich team that had gained some confidence and some momentum after their recent win to Spurs. I don't think playing Eriksen was wise, especially when Evans is playing behind him in a back 3 and Evans is struggling. And that's another player who we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, Eriksen doesn't have the legs to play in a midfield 2. If you're going to play Christian Eriksen, it has to be in either one of the more advanced positions or in a midfield 3. That's it. It's non-negotiable. End of story, end of conversation. There's no other correct opinion. If you have a different opinion, you're wrong. I'm just kidding. But no, Eriksen can't play in a midfield 2. Moving on, Evans, who I just mentioned a couple of seconds ago, he was also pretty bad today. He was also struggling big time. So Johnny Evans, I think he's past his best, man. Even though he's been our best centre-back over the last couple of seasons, I've always said that that's more a reflection of how bad Manchester United are and not a reflection of how good Johnny Evans still is, because he's not that good anymore. He's past his best. And the fact that he's been one of our best centre-backs, again, it's more of a reflection of how bad United have been over the last couple of seasons and less of an indicator that he should be starting games, because he shouldn't. We're almost in 2025 and Johnny Evans is still starting games for Manchester United. Deep that, man. We missed Lisandro Martinez so much today. So that's another thing. You know, the defense today wasn't particularly great. Mazraoui, another player I want to talk about. I think his talents are wasted in possession when he's starting as a centre-back. I think Mazraoui has to play as a wing-back, and obviously, as a consequence of that, I think Amad Diallo needs to now play in one of the 10 positions or on the opposite flank as a wing-back, right? He just can't take up Mazraoui's spot on that right wing-back. I understand why Amorim did it under the circumstances with all the injuries and the players not being available, but in future, we cannot see Mazraoui be sacrificed and be the guy who has to play out of position, because his technical ability on the ball is so important to how we progress the ball up the field, how we're able to create chances, and just be more secure in possession. We missed that big time in today's game against Ipswich. So many opportunities where we could have progressed the ball up the field through the middle of the park, but we decided to go out wide and we decided to play hoofball because that trust in the midfield players and the players who were playing through the middle was not there, right? The likes of Garnacho, Rashford always losing the ball, and then as a consequence, making us vulnerable on the counter-attack, right? We need that security through the middle of the park, and I think Mazraoui either inverting or playing as one of the wing-backs is going to be huge for that. I think also Lisandro Martinez coming back into the team will help with that a little bit, and obviously a different midfield too at the base will remedy that quickly. Amorim has to change this quickly, and he needs to learn these lessons fast, man. The last point I'll kind of touch on before I end off the video is Diogo Dalot. I don't think he was particularly great today. And you know what's funny? I forgot that Dalot was starting because I was paying so much attention to Diallo and Mazraoui and that beautiful triangle on the right-hand side between them, the link up. It was just mwah, chef's kiss. But I didn't really notice our other flank, and I was kind of zeroing in on Garnacho, thinking Garnacho was the biggest problem. But then I was like, wait a minute. Garnacho, Evans, who else played on the left? Oh yeah, Dalot. I didn't notice him today. I think Dalot needs to be dropped for a few games. And anybody who's a long-term viewer of the channel knows that I love Diogo Dalot. He is in my top 5 favorite players at United at the moment because I just adore him. I absolutely think that Diogo Dalot is good enough to play for Manchester United. But at the moment, in terms of recent form, he needs to be dropped. He needs some time out of the team. Not permanently, obviously, but he needs a couple of games out of the team. And, you know, Ruben Amorim needs to try something different. I think if that means playing Mazraoui and Diallo as the wing-backs for the short term, I'm all for it. Just get Diogo Dalot out of the team just for a game or two, you know, because I feel like this guy's played too much football and I think that he's just burnt out, if I'm being completely honest. That's the issue that I see with Diego Dalot. He's not the same player he was last season, and he's just not been good enough. Today was another example, and maybe I'm being harsh on him, but I just didn't notice him. I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. But yeah, man, that was kind of the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about. Ruben Amorim's first game, a draw away from home against Ipswich Town. I know that a lot of Manchester United fans and rival fans, rightfully so, because they're rivals, that's their job, will be catastrophizing this draw away from home and making it seem a lot worse than it actually is. Personally, I'm not that upset because my expectations in terms of league form and where we should finish are much lower than a lot of other people. I've always said that Manchester United are never making top four this season before Ruben Amorim because of that other bold Dutch guy. And I'm still maintaining that even now because we don't have the profiles that Ruben Amorim needs to make the system a success, in my humble opinion. I think individually, United have got some good players, and our squad on an individual level is pretty good, a lot better than some people think. But collectively, they don't mesh well. And that's my issue with this team. So when I go in on players like Garnacho, when I go in on players like Rashford, it's not because I have an issue with them individually. It's not personal. It's just that I think they don't suit each other well, and they cannot be starting together in the same team if we want to be a serious football club in 2025 and beyond. So yeah, I'm not too mad about today's performance because it's more or less what I expected. I did not expect Manchester United to go and destroy Ipswich Town 3-0. I expected a very sluggish game. I expected a slugfest, a drunken bar fight, if you will, between a team that is trying out a new system and another team that's fighting for relegation. So there you go. It's been your boy Triple M. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like in the video if you want to support the channel and subscribe if you are new. Peace!